Good morning, everyone. This is Bastien live from Singapore. This is episode 19 of the Decanted portfolio. We are Friday, the 6th of March. Hello, Nico. Good morning. How are you?
Thank you, Bastian. Hello, good afternoon to you in Singapore. Busy podcast today. I'm very good.
Yeah, busy podcast. And maybe let me quickly start by the traditional but important disclaimer. So first, I know this is not financial advice. We are just giving our opinion, and you have to invest according to your own interest and your profile. And second, please drink responsibly. We love wine, but please be responsible. It's super important to stay in good conditions. So let me also quickly talk about our sponsor about this episode. Okay, this sponsor is Pantare, and Pantare is the autonomous investment engine that helps you to manage your portfolio. And you can find some information on our website. You can go on www.pantar.ai. So please visit this website. Nico, just of course, an important question because this will drive, I think, all this conversation and all this podcast. What happened on the financial market this week? I think it was quite a busy week.
Yes, thank you, Bastian. Thank you. First thing, we have a new website, so please make sure that you go and you visit it. It will be exciting. Second, incredibly busy day. You know that we are changing the structure of the podcast to front run, to put in front the fun part about wine tasting with some anchoring to what is happening in financial markets without spending too much time. But this week we have seen the start of a war in Iran, and so we want to tackle the geopolitical update with all of you before going into wines. So wines for later, we'll discuss about wines in the Middle East or with taste of petrol on the topic. Okay, anticipating this, but we'll talk about it later. Now I just want to mention that a war has started in the Middle East. Israel and the United States have attacked Iran. While we are not going into politics, it needs to be clear as a context that this is a war where probably not many will miss the corrupted or violent regime in Iran, which doesn't mean that people from Iran are the same. But the United States and Israel have started this war without any legal green light, which means that allies have been taken by surprise, which means that financial markets are reacting with a sense of surprise. And what we want to mention here is that in the region, 20% of the global oil is produced, refined, and shipped. And while there is oil coming from many other parts of the world, especially from the United States, the US markets have been more insulated this week, less noisy, tanking anyway, but less strongly. But Europe, that after the war between Russia and Ukraine, depends on the natural gas of Qatar. China and Japan and the rest of Asia, depending on the oil, not only from Iran, but shipped through the Strait of Hormuz, are in trouble. So what is going on is that the war is blocking effectively all the transit of oil cargoes, which means that the oil price is going higher. The attacks or the reaction of Iran, not only against Israel, not only against the US bases in the Middle East, but against the not allies, but the friendly countries of Qatar, Kuwait, Emirates, Jordan, is putting oil facilities in trouble, and Saudi Arabia as well. And while the Saudis have built a pipeline from the Strait of Hormuz down into the Red Sea for an alternative shipping lane, the volume of the pipeline is not enough and it will not really change the game. So, natural gas available to Europe will be less and less. Europe in trouble. Luckily, winter is over, but European stock markets reacted with violence. The Euro stocks at the moment of the podcast is doing minus 5 in 1 week. Emerging market stocks minus 7 in 1 week to now. Gold, it should edge almost minus 10 this week. We started at $5,400. We are at $5,100 now. So financial markets reacting badly. The only good area, if we want to say, is the S&P at minus 0.5 because of the US energy independence. So oil and gas, as in the past, when there's a supply shock like this, rule global markets. It's not a commercial pitch here, but we have to say that we designed the Pantarray to defend from any extreme market conditions. We have been able to turn the portfolio around this week big time. Incredible changes. And while we don't have a crystal ball and we need to work on a trend, within the week the portfolio has been coming down only -2 versus the -4, -7, or -10 that we mentioned. Okay, the situation is that the war is pushing financial markets to focus on energy supply and the future of the ability of companies to produce energy or to consume energy, and so to produce earnings by selling goods and services around the planet. Okay, so this is the point that we wanted to make, and this is the theme for the wine tasting of this week. Unfortunately, we are moving from a problematic humanitarian issue into free time with wines, but the idea is how can we stay on topic. And I would now pass the baton to you, Bastian, saying in this context, according to this podcast, what has been your wine choice for this week given the environment?
I think and thank you, Nico, for this analysis. I think it was pretty obvious for me to talk about oil, because oil, of course, is highly impacted by what's going on in the Middle East these last days, and I found it interesting to talk about some wines which sometimes can have a taste or smell of petrol, and usually, of course, you can have several wines which can have a taste of petrol. It's not very common, and not everybody will like it when you taste it, because it's very strong and very specific taste. But personally, I do like it when it's well made. And of course, we're going to talk about this kind of wines, and we are talking only about one grape, because you have one grape which give this state, and I'm talking about Riesling. So Riesling is a grape that produces white wines, and it is usually known, for, of course, very known for one region, which is Germany, because in Germany you have a lot of Riesling wine. It's a perfect match with the climate, but you have several regions where you can find some very good and very interesting Riesling. The first one, of course, largest one, Germany, so very well known, and you have it in the Moselle region mostly, which is not too far from another country where you find some good Riesling, France, and talking about Alsace. So for people who are interested about history, Alsace was at sometimes, in the history in Germany as well. So you see they are very, very close one to another one. So they share a border. They are a couple of kilometers away. And I think, Nico, you have also a map you will show on the map at some point where Alsace is.
Here, yes, it's shown.
Yes, it's full east of Paris, at the border with Germany. And in terms also of famous regions, we are going far, far, far away, because you have some very famous also Riesling in Australia. South of Australia, where you have the Clar and the Eden Valley, which are well known for producing very good and very interesting Riesling. So if we go back about what Riesling wine likes in terms of geography, in terms of climate, and I want to focus specifically also in Alsace in France, because this is where you have a famous producer of Riesling named Trimbach, because it's Trimbach, so it's Bach in German. So it's and in Alsace we speak. They have local dialect also, which is close to German, and they are one of the most famous producers in France, at least, and they have a very good quality cuvée named Frédéric Émile, which is produced in this region. So continental climate, meaning very cold in winter, very hot in summer. So in a nutshell, okay, and also steep slopes because you have a river, you have a Rhine River, which is a Rhine River, which is shared also between France and Germany, which also sometimes is even the border between France and Germany. And you have in middle of slopes, very steep, and you find the good grapes. I mean, of course, on the upper side of the slopes, which with like east southeast orientation to get the sun, to be able to have enough sugar and alcohol in these grapes, because it's otherwise you don't see the light during the day in winter and even in spring. And you have a lot of very diverse soils. So that's very interesting. And it's also geographically protected from the Vosges mountains. So Vosges are not very famous. It's a little bit north of the Alps. It's smaller mountains. But they play an important role because they are protecting, the Alsace from bad weather and from the cold also and from the rain. So that's also important. Just to move on, the aromas, you have three different kind of aromas when you taste the wine. You have a primary aromas, okay, and they come, from really the grapes, okay, and from the alcohol of the grapes, and this is like linked with the fermentation. Secondary aromas, they are coming from post-fermentation, okay, so after the fermentation, depending on what the winemaker does, you're gonna have impact in terms of the taste. And then you have tertiary aromas, which are linked to maturation, and meaning aging the wine. And if you want to find a good Riesling with petrol taste, you need to usually target wines which are between 5 to 10 years age, because this is an aromas which will grow after some couple of years. And so in terms of service, how do you serve this kind of wine? It's good to serve it not too cold, because otherwise you won't have a fruit taste. So around like 12 degrees 12 degrees Celsius for a white wine, which is not very cold. And in terms of food, if you want to think about food pairing, usually it's very good with food from Asia, so like spicy Thai food. It's an interesting match. But if you want to look for something original, and if you never tasted that kind of wine, I would recommend to look from Riesling from Germany, from France, or from Australia, and ask for like aged wine to really see how it looks like. And some people also tell kerosene for the taste. You have petrol, kerosene, but it can be very interesting and can be still very good.
Thank you, Bastian. See, I love the
Welcome.
region. Love the region. Well described. Alsace, I mean, but you also mentioned Eden and Clare Valley in Australia. Super interesting to try. I have very good memories of this grape. I think it goes very well with spicy food, but also if you have a nice aperitivo in a rainy day with some good cheese of some flavor, and you have the Riesling with that taste, also beautiful. You mentioned Frédéric Émile as a beautiful cuvée of Trimbach, this golden, fantastic label. I remember another top producer there, which is Zind Umbrecht. I don't know if I say it well, from Alsace as well. They do a close Winzbull cuvée, which can be Gewürztraminer or Riesling. And these are white wines that last 20 years in the cellar as well. Right, and so...
Because in Alsace, I didn't say it, but there's also a very high acidity because of the cold. And of course, acidity is super important for the aging, because the more the wines are acid, they can last, more years. So all the condition, and you're totally right. But the good thing, the beauty also, you can discover also some Riesling for some other region. Of course, the one I gave are like the most known one, but for instance, I remember one from South Africa, which was very good as well. So we can find some Riesling going. It's just you need to have this kind of continental conditions. So meaning you need to find to have a cold winter. Of course, in South Africa, in Cape Town, it's not freezing, so it's not that cold, but therefore the vineyard is not too far from the sea. And as the sea is really cold in Cape Town, you can have basically, I mean, the a lower temperature on this vineyard, so in very specific location, you can find the same condition, and of course, hot summer to get some sugar and be able to produce enough alcohol for the wine. But yes, it's interesting things I discovered. I mean, this kind of product in New York 25 years ago, because I never experienced between my mid-20s this kind of petrol test. I was like shocked the first time. Mm-hmm. But again, I recommend for people that don't know to try this wine. It's fantastic. And I never had the chance to I didn't go in Alsace. I never went. So it's part of my list, a little bit too far away. But at some point, I'm sure I heard it's a very, very nice region to visit as well.
It is with Colmar, Ribeauvillé. No, impromptu observation now that you mentioned the sugars. Small guide for consumers. The Rieslings everywhere can be sweet or dry. The Riesling is a semi-aromatic grape, and so it will have a strong primary smell, which typically is not strong in other grapes like the Chardonnays. Is more secondary or tertiary smells. The Riesling or the Gewürztraminers will have an intense smell of themselves, which tends to be sweet, Swedish, together with the kerosene and petrol that you say. And check the label where you will see an alcohol level below 12%. The fermentation of sugars is not complete. They will tend to be sweet or semi-sweet. Still beautiful wines, less for the table. Above 12 or 12.5 degrees, or check the levels of sugars. There are guides to understand how much is for sweet wines or not. But above 12.5, you are safe that they tend to be fully dry wines for the table. They will smell sweet, but they are not at the end. Now, check for this. I think is an interesting thing to do when you want to try to understand where you're trying. Anyway, thank you. Fantastic. Love those grapes. And thank you for the deep dive on the grapes, crossing some regions. I will move towards a regional discovery. We go into what are secondary in terms of volumes produced and in terms of overall global knowledge, secondary wine regions, but with the opportunity, which is a bad word, but to link the bad news of the war to a region. Maybe not many of you know that wine is also produced in the areas of Turkey, which is just bordering Iran and Syria somehow on that side, but we include it in the region. Wine is produced in Lebanon, thanks to the French connection, and wine is produced in Israel. And in, 10, 20 years ago, it was more of a nuance, more of a touristy experience. But some wines have been grown in quality. Probably the most famous wine in the region is the Chateau Musar from Lebanon, but also an Israeli producer called Flam in 2024 ended up in the top 100 wines on the planet by Wine Spectator. So I just want to show you the regions, if I may, in video, because these will be areas that not many of you will know. So in Turkey, the wine is done just next to Istanbul on the European continental side, which you can see in pink here. In the Marmara Mediterranean region, which is wet on the sea, similar to Greece, and we'll go also in Greece later on, but we'll dedicate an episode to Greece. And better, 15-20% of the Turkish wine, probably better quality, is done in the internal hills of Anatolia, where the nights are colder. So hard to find outside of Turkey, but there are some wines which are produced in Turkey, which are, if you wish, less easy to find out for export. More famous, and I will switch into a new map, are the wines in Lebanon, south of Turkey. There are different areas where the war is raging in between the south and Beirut. Not too many producers, but Chateau Musar, you can find my mouse here, is just north of Beirut in the area which is called Mount Lebanon. but the biggest producing area is the Bekaa Valley in pink, which is the area on the mountains inside in the inner Lebanon. Lebanon has done a number of producing wines which are related to French grapes. There are the Chardonnays, Chateau Mousaris, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cinsault, and Carignan. So Lebanon has been from the early days. Chateau Mousar started in 1930, a good producer of local wine, Mediterranean flavors. The French grapes are very rich. There's a lot of humidity there, but Chateau Mousar is very well respected for its aging capacity. Okay, so if you have a chance, there are some products to try in Lebanon. We'll not go into detail in the region. They are difficult to buy, but if you happen to be close to that region, you can find some, or maybe at the restaurant, and they are worth trying. Finally, I'm going into Israel, which probably is a surprise for many of you. There are different regions in Israel, the part of the Golan Heights or down in Judea. These are the two regions which are more promising for wine. And also wines here tend to be international grapes. And so you will have the Chardonnays, Sauvignons, or Cabernet Sauvignon. They tend to be produced with the kosher spin on top. So some flavors will be different than wines which are not pasteurized, but definitely wines are produced also there. And I think here the idea is just to give you an overview that you can now find many different wines in different regions. To produce top wines or the most famous wines, you need to have what you mentioned, Bastian, in Alsace, which is very cool or cold nights, and in some parts of the season, some power from the sun. In the Middle East, the sun power has it. Where you don't have the heights, the humidity makes the vines overgrow, and so you need to have a lot of human work to keep the plants in check, to suffer a little bit, to get all the minerals and nutrients from the soil. But where you have hills or mountains, as we mentioned, in central Anatolia, in some parts of Israel, good wines can be produced, okay? So
I think what you said is very important, Nico, because this is also something that I discovered through my WSCT classes. Is like, if you want to get good wines to drink, not taking, and this is not the same thing that good grapes to eat, because this is not absolutely not the same kind of of grapes, and the techniques are different. But to drink, the vineyards, they need to suffer, meaning that they need to be in a dry environment, meaning like to have a lot of heat, to make sure basically with the roots, the vineyards, are going to look for the minerals and basically the water very deep and as much as it can. And therefore, as it's stressed, this is how basically the grapes are incorporating all the flavor, all the specificity of the soils. And therefore, if you have too much water, if it's too easy for the vineyards to grow, you have less intensity, and then this is not, a juice that you can drink and you won't enjoy. So this is really, it was a big discovery for me. I didn't know that before starting, my class. Is very interesting.
yes, and this is why famous wine regions tend also to be hilly, because when the water comes, it doesn't stay, it drains down just enough for the plant to drink, but not water to stay. So the steepness on the hills is important for the water not to stay as well. No, there's a number of factors there. In any case, I would say thank you for the overview, Bastian. Thank you for the Rieslings. We mentioned the unfortunate news of the war, the implications for energy prices, the fact that we are managing this all-weather strategy for all market conditions, and it has an opportunity to move this week. Thank you. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. Share the podcast with your friends. Give us feedback. Go to the new website. And with this, I would say goodbye, right?
Yeah, and also subscribe to our newsletter. We are on Substack. So please, if you want to receive weekly news on the market, on Panta.ai, on our ETP, or on our digital CIO app, subscribe to our Substack Panta web page.
Pantarai, Sì, pantarai.substack.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
and talk to you next week.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Ciao.